Good morning, student. I am Dr. Bhupendra Saha, Assistant Professor of Department of Internal Medicine, BP Koirala Institute of Health Sciences, Dharan, Nepal. In anemia series, today we'll discuss about hemolytic anemia. This presentation is for 6th semester MBBS student. So what we are going to discuss today? To understand about the concept of hemolytic anemia, we should first understand what is the RBC life cycle. Then after having a good understanding of the RBC life cycle, then we'll discuss about the hemolytic anemia proper. We'll define what is hemolytic anemia. We'll discuss about the type of the hemolytic anemia. We'll discuss about the clinical feature of the hemolytic anemia and the lab investigation of hemolytic anemia. In today's presentation, for the 6th semester MBBS student, we are not going to discuss in detail about the individual hemolytic anemia. So let us look the life cycle of the RBC. The life cycle of the RBC starts from the marrow of the flat bones or also the terminal end of the long bones. The site is called the bone marrow. This is the site where the erythropoiesis occurs, where the RBC formation occurs. After passing its life cycle in the marrow, it has to go to the peripheral circulation as RBCs. Then, after some days, these all RBCs get trapped in the spleen and they die in the spleen. So RBC has certain life cycle. Okay. So you can see the different stages of the RBCs. When the RBC get formed in the bone marrow, especially in the terminal ends of the long bones and the marrow of the flat bones, it goes through the different stages of its development. The RBCs which get released in an immature form in the peripheral circulation is called the reticulocyte. The difference between the reticulocyte and the mature RBC is that reticulocyte contains the RNA. It is like relatively larger in size. And after 1 to 2 days, this reticulocyte get converted into the mature RBC. Okay. Then think about the lifespan of RBCs. RBCs lifespan starts at the marrow of the flat bones and the terminal ends of the long bones. It goes to the different stages in the marrows and it comes to the RBCs, then ultimately get killed in the spleen. So what is the lifespan of RBC? The lifespan of the RBC is around 100 to 120 days. It's near about 3 months. That is the lifespan of RBC. But there are some conditions in our body where the lifespan of the RBC gets shortened. And if the lifespan of the RBC is less than 100 days because of any conditions, then that's called the hemolytic anemia. So how we can classify the hemolytic anemia? Think about the RBC. So RBC, inside the RBC, there is hemoglobins. There are different types of enzymes, and the RBC have also the membrane. Okay, and the intracorpuscular means is inside the RBCs. It has also the two types. One is hereditary and acquired type. There are some hereditary conditions where there are problems in the hemoglobin. The classical one is thalassemia. It is one of the hemoglobinopathies. The normal adult hemoglobin contains 2 alpha and 2 beta chain, but if someone has the thalassemia, then like there is dysfunction in these chains. So this condition is called hemoglobinopathies. So in these conditions, there can occur the hemolytic anemia. Similarly, there are some enzymopathies like G6PD deficiency. The presence of G6PD makes RBC immune to different oxidant injuries. But if RBC lacks this type of enzymes, G6PD, there are also enzymes as well like pyruvate kinase, then RBC can be hemolyzed prematurely. Similarly, there RBC has the membranes. If it has the like functional membranes, then it can change its shape while passing through the spleen. But if there is some problem in the membrane, then it gets rigid. It cannot change its shape. And so the RBC get trapped in the spleen and get lysed. The condition is called hereditary spherocytosis. There is called eleptocytosis as well. So the causes of the hemolytic anemia are thalassemia, one is G6PD deficiency, and hereditary spherocytosis. These are the hereditary cause, and the defect is in the intracorpuscular. There are some acquired cause where the defect in intracorpuscular. The classical condition is paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria. It is one of the acquired cause of hemolytic anemia where the defect lies at the intracorpuscular region. There are some conditions where the RBC is functional properly. RBC has the normal hemoglobin, normal enzymes, normal membrane cytoskeleton. But there is problem in the circulation in the blood vessels. So one hereditary conditions where there is problem in extracorpuscular region are the familial hemolytic uremic syndrome. Similarly, there are conditions where the vessels are narrowed, like in case of microangiopathies. There are some drugs which can lyse the RBCs. There are some infections which can lyse the RBCs. So we can divide the hemolytic anemia into 4 parts. One is intracorpuscular and have extracorpuscular, and then another is the hereditary and acquired. We have to memorize this mode of the classification of the hemolytic anemia. Now let us go to the clinical features. We are not going to discuss in the details of the pathophysiology of the hemolytic anemia. So the clinical feature that makes us like this patient might have hemolytic anemia is that everyone should have the anemia, and we have discussed a lot about the anemia. They should have history of fatigability, they should have history of the accessional shortness of breath, accessional palpitation, and tinnitus, fatigability. But beside these symptoms of the anemia, if someone has the jaundice, doctor, I am fatigued, I am also having jaundice, then I have to suspect the hemolytic anemia. Okay. Similarly, in case of the child, you can see this type of face. There is prominence of the maxillary bones, flattening of the foreheads, nasal, there is flattening of the nasal bridge. And if you see this type of the face, then should always suspect of the hemolytic anemia. This feature of chipmunk face. And third important clue that makes us suspect the hemolytic anemia is the passage of this type of urines, black urines especially, which we call the hemoglobinuria. It is not necessary that in every type of the hemolytic anemia you are going to see all these clinical features, but if someone has this type of features beside the features of the anemia, then we have to strongly suspect the hemolytic anemia. Someone may have anemia with jaundice, someone may have anemia, jaundice, and this type of face. Someone have just anemia and the passes of hemoglobinuria like that. Okay. Then examination finding. So on examination finding, what about jaundice? What do you think? There will be jaundice or not? Yes. We expect jaundice in case of hemolytic anemia, classical in case of extravascular hemolysis. But the jaundice in hemolytic anemia is not that severe. Okay. Usually the bilirubin level will be less than 5. Why it is not severe? Because our liver has the capacity to metabolize the bilirubin 8 times than its normal limit. Okay, so if you produce more amount of the bilirubin, then it can be metabolized by the liver if liver is functioning properly. That's why you are not going to see the deep jaundice, you are going to see the faint jaundice. Second important finding is the anemia. Yes, you see the anemia. Third is lymphadenopathy and cyanosis. We are not going to see. Edema is less likely in a patient with hemolytic anemia. In the systemic examination findings, we have to always check the liver and spleen. These are the organs which have capacity to have the hematopoiesis, where the RBC can be formed if required, especially in the child. So in case of hemolytic anemia, these organs can be enlarged. There can be hepatomegaly and there can be splenomegaly. Okay, so you have to always palpate the liver and spleen if you suspect the hemolytic anemia. The lab investigation findings, you have to conceptualize. There are two phenomena that is going to occur. One is when the RBC is undergoing the hemolysis, then there will be definitely there will be the excessive accumulation of the product of the hemolysis that we can detect in lab. Second abnormality that we are going to get is that as there is the ongoing hemolysis, then there should be the excessive erythropoietic response in the bone marrow, because bone marrow has to compensate the ongoing hemolysis. So definitely you'll see the feature of the erythropoietic response in the bone marrow. Then what are the products of the hemolysis? As you know, once the hemoglobin get released in the spleen, ultimately it get and converted into the biliverdin and then bilirubin. So bilirubin is a byproduct of hemoglobin metabolism. That's why you will get the more amount of the unconjugated bilirubin in a patient with the hemolytic anemia. Aspartate transferase and lactate dehydrogenase, these are the enzymes. Classically, these are the enzymes that you can get in the livers. But even in RBCs, even inside the RBCs, there is aspartate transferase and lactate dehydrogenase. So if the RBC is undergoing the hemolysis, then definitely we'll see the increased level of aspartate transferase and lactate dehydrogenase. What is the report? Unconjugated fraction of bilirubin will increase and AST will be increased. And if you are not serious enough, then you might be thinking, oh, this patient may have the liver involvement. But if you think properly, then maybe just a case of hemolytic anemia. Then about the erythropoietic response, definitely we'll see some features of erythropoietic response. If you do the bone marrow, then definitely we'll see the more amount of erythroid series of the cells, which we do not do often. What do you see in the peripheral smear? That in the peripheral smear, these are the reticulocytes. So what do you see? The more immature cell comes to these RBC circulations. That's why we see the more reticulocytes in the RBCs. If there is a reticulocytosis in the RBCs in the peripheral smears, then definitely have to think about the hemolysis. And if we assess the mean corpuscular volume, then it will be increased, because when you are detecting, it is not detecting the size of the RBCs, it is detecting the size of the reticulocytes, and definitely the size of the RBC is larger than that of the normal RBC. So MCV is common. This characteristic of the hemolytic anemia make us confused confusion. Oh, it may be a case of like vitamin B12 deficiency or megaloblastic anemia, like that. Okay, but it's not like that. You have to think in a holistic manner. I think this is the last slide that I have to tell. I have to discuss. There are some causes of the extravascular hemolysis or intravascular hemolysis. Like classical intravascular hemolysis, we get in the PNS, and extravascular hemolysis we'll get in different types of the, like in case of the hereditary spherocytosis or like thalassemia, we get extravascular hemolysis. In case of the extra or autoimmune hemolytic anemia, we get extravascular hemolysis. In case of the extravascular hemolysis, if the size of the RBC is irregular and antibody, these RBC like get lysed in the spleen, and the spleen ultimately they form the bilirubin. That's why in case of extravascular hemolysis, what we are going to see, we see the large spleen. One, second is that we see the large spleen. Third, and the another characteristic is that increase in unconjugated bilirubin, and definitely unconjugated bilirubin will be high. If someone has the splenomegaly and the increase in unconjugated bilirubin, then we have to suspect of the extravascular hemolysis. But the classical things about the intravascular hemolysis is that the free hemoglobin get released in the intravascular hemolysis. They get released in the, so if there is a free hemoglobin in the vessels, inside the vessels lumen, these are the toxics. So that has to be neutralized by another compound, and the name of the compound is haptoglobin. So haptoglobin binds this free hemoglobin, and then it excreted through the kidney. So what happens? So in the typical clinical feature of the intravascular hemolysis is that you see the plasma hemoglobin, okay, which you can detect by in the lab. You see the reduced haptoglobin level, and you also see the hemoglobin urea. Okay, so these are the picture of the intravascular hemolysis. So this may be the one of your MCQ questions. So the take-home message from today's presentation is, if someone has the RBCs in their circulation, and where the lifespan of RBC is less than 100 days, then it's a hemolytic anemia. It is of different types, but classically we can divide into the intracorpuscular and extracorpuscular, acquired, and then genetic. Someone asks you what are the causes of hemolytic anemia, you can say like thalassemia, Serge, SSPD, hereditary spherocytosis, the PNAs, and then these you can say like this. The clinic, when do you suspect hemolytic anemia? Someone has the anemia and like jaundice, then splenomegaly or hepatomegaly, or hemoglobinuria, then definitely we have to suspect. The lab, we are going to get the increase in unconjugated bilirubin, increase in EST, increase in LDS, increase in reticulocyte count, then we will suspect hemolytic anemia. So I think today we'll end in this presentation, and we haven't discussed the details about this type of the hemolytic anemia. I think this is out of scope for the 6th semester MBBS student. Till the next presentation, thank you so much for your kind attention. Bye bye.